we are here. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm actually nervous. You are the first, because you are the first design leader and principal joining in our interview series. Thank you so much. Always been super open and you know, happy to participate in all the initiatives that we launch in Architect US. I don't know if you can hear me properly.
I can, but there is a little bit of feedback.
Okay, let me see if yeah. Is it better now?
Much better, yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I think it was my cell phone. So let me just briefly introduce you. I'm sure that many of our followers today have done some research to learn more about you if they didn't know already. But we are going to interview such an inspiring woman. We have become some sort of colleagues now throughout these years collaborating. So it's a real pleasure for me because since I met her, I saw her like a reference in terms of how strong she seems always and determined, and you know, her attitude is very inspiring. So I'm sure that you're gonna get a lot of you know, tips and inspiration and recommendations to continue your career if you are already thinking on how to set up your own firm, you know, what sort of difficulties or hardships you may encounter. And on top of that, if you're thinking of doing it overseas, you know, she can speak of all this. Beatrice studied architecture in the University of Rome in La Sapienza. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Really right.
And got licensed not only in Italy but also the UK. I mean, she has like extensive international experience. She obviously
I worked in London for a few years, and so I was able to do my part 3 and then also become sort of
licensed there.
Yeah, licensed. So a lot of people think that RIBA is the licensing, but it isn't. Like, no. RIBA is a club, so it's like
it's like the AIA, right? I mean, you can get
correct. So, but ARB is the licensing sort of body in the UK. So actually, you cannot legally call yourself an architect unless you are ARB registered. So.
Correct. I mean, it's the same system that in the US. I was gonna actually ask you about that because I also worked in London many years ago, only for a couple of years. And at that time I was very early in my career, so I didn't think of doing my part 3, but I was doing like the part 2 equivalents. So gaining all the experience and so on. And I didn't know if you actually pass all the exams. So yeah, you are RIBA accredited, I mean, licensed in the UK. You could build and call yourself an architect.
For sure in the UK, but in the US, so now that the UK actually has broken away from the European community, they have resumed the talks for grandfathering licensing from the UK to the US. But all that negotiation was interrupted like 20 years ago because the UK was falling under European community regulations.
I see.
So, but that's a whole other discussion.
Wow. I don't know why they always try to make it even more complicated, right? For all of us. Because how many years of studies are in Rome to become architect? 5, 6?
So it's a 5-year degree, but like most people complete probably in about 6 years. So.
Okay, 6 years. Okay, that's interesting. In Spain, the average is almost 10 years. It's crazy.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When I enrolled there, I wasn't 19. And there were people that were like 45 that were still there. So,
they were still there.
That are definitely in Italy. There is a whole other like career that it's basically being an architectural student. It's a career on its own, but like you could actually graduate in 5.5, 6 years if you.
Okay. Hold on a second. One of our followers is telling me that for some reason is the sound is duplicated. I don't know exactly why. Let me then turn off this and I'll turn on this. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think it's me because I'm completely on mute and silent.
Yeah. No. Maybe it was me. Guys, can you please tell us if you can hear us properly now? You don't hear me like double or anything, right, Beatrice?
I do hear a little bit of feedback in the background.
For some reason, if we hear the feedback, it's good for them. They're saying that there is echo in both sides. Still, I mean, Arturo just said that they're hearing us perfectly well. It was good a second ago. Okay. Oh my gosh, it's saying that
I can read it. But they're saying just you.
Okay. Why don't you just let me pick up my headphones? Maybe that's an option. Yes. Let's see if this works better. Okay. Can you guys hear us better?
I think now it's perfect. There is no echo at all.
Okay. Okay. Oh, it still has an echo. I don't understand why. Guys, we will have to go with this. I don't know. Do you, Beatrice, hear me properly?
There is a tiny little bit of, no, now I'm hearing everybody, even myself.
Okay, like this. There's no other way. I mean, I have my computer is mute. It's only my headphones, so I don't understand where they. Oh, maybe it's the camera plus the. I don't know. Okay, let me see if I can. Oh my gosh. Okay. Guys, is it better now? I don't know why. I mean, we did the same thing the other times. I don't know why there's echo. I mean, we're trying a new camera that maybe has its own microphone, but now the echo is only from your side. I can tell you, so it's me. I don't know what to do. Okay, I mute entirely it will work now.
So I did the same. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did the same. I switched between the two.
Okay. Ahora. Okay. It seems like Arturo, thank you so much. You are like our angel here. Audio is good now. Bye. Lucky. Thank you so much for letting us know. I don't know what happened, guys. Every time there's always something. But okay, let me just recap so we can focus and make the most out of Beatrice. We're not going to have her often, so we have to enjoy her as much as possible. So I was saying that Beatrice has a background obviously in Italy, where she's from, but she has nurtured her cultural references from Europe while working in the UK and Germany as well, and then she moved to the US. That I would love to learn a little bit more about that moment. I mean, you were back in the UK when you decided to move to the US, or how did it exactly happen, that shift?
Yes, I was living in the UK, which I would say, since we're talking to a lot of people that may be interested at some point to make that switch, for me, at least working in the UK was very important. Because when or if you decide to transition to another country, especially another English-speaking country, whether it's Australia or the US, people will have a lot more confidence if you actually worked in the UK. Number one, because you have a different command, obviously, of the language, and the technical terminology, the technical lingo, but also because people incorrectly in the US assume that in the UK you work in inches, which is not true. And so they feel more confident because they feel that the measuring system is the same, which actually it isn't. In fact, when I moved to the US, I had to basically train myself to sort of work in inches, which is not just a kind of scaling or working in CAD, but is developing kind of an eye. We all can say, hey, how far is that chair? I don't know, 3 meters, but it's not, instinctively, you don't think it's 10 feet. So you have to basically kind of retrain yourself to see the space in a different sort of measurement system. But I mean, it's something that we've all done.
That's an interesting point, because in a different interview, someone asked us like if a short internship, like a summer internship, could help towards growing and obviously gaining like a proper experience, as you said, overseas before moving to the US, especially in an English-speaking country, will be better. But even if you only did like a few months, that will help a lot to contextualize where you are coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
And I experienced the same thing when I moved to New York, that just by the fact that I had worked in London before, they treated me in a different way. It's a matter of kind of knowing a little bit more where you are coming from, because maybe you come from a great university in Brazil or in Hong Kong, but you know that seems to be super far away from them. So moving from the UK to the US is like a pretty smooth transition, and for me it was great too. So
it's definitely makes things a little bit easier for sure. And then from London, I moved actually initially to Seattle, but like it was really just related to personal kind of circumstances. It had nothing to do with sort of like a career choice. But when I moved to Seattle, it was like 1999 actually. So the whole kind of software industry was booming. So it was actually very easy to find work. I mean, it was probably the process of obtaining a visa, which was a lot slower than finding work. But I had interviews, and consider 20 years ago, the internet wasn't as developed. So it's not like there were many sites where you could find sort of, you know, openings or apply. Nevertheless, there were lots of opportunities. And so it was actually pretty...
How did you do? Did you pack your bags and move to Seattle?
No, of course. I mean, I was, as I explained, I was moving for different reasons anyway, for personal reasons. So all that part was, I wasn't just kind of moving in search of fortune. Also because I would have not chosen Seattle probably. But like before moving, I did some research and I contacted some firms. And when I actually arrived there, I realized, I mean, there were lots of like firms of different sizes, and I was more interested anyway in smaller firms. And I just interviewed with a few firms, and honestly, I got quite a few job offers, like, and very quickly. So.
And the typical question, what is your visa status, never happened?
No, of course. I mean, I was very, like, I did my research, and I knew what type of visa I was eligible for. So when I went to interviews, I was very clear about the fact that, like, in order to apply for an H-1B, I needed a certain type of sponsorship. And then obviously, once you explain to people what the process is about, either they understand it and they're open to it, or they're not. But in my case, I actually, I had asked sort of my lawyer to speak with prospective employers, and just to explain that, you know, the process in reality is not that difficult, and that was it. But it's also true that at the time, the H-1B was a lot less difficult.
I was going to say, it doesn't seem to be pretty...
Because I can tell you, I have sponsored the H-1B myself, and many of them, like as an employer. And right now, the qualifications are much higher Like they give precedence to people that have masters, but they have masters in the US. So those are all the people that they process first. So
I see. That's interesting how things have changed through the years. I mean,
yeah, and the number has become smaller and smaller. I mean, now it's less than half than it used to be. So.
Oh, okay. That's
I think when I did it, the cap was 115,000, and I think now the cap is 50,000 or 65. Every year they adjust it. So,
yeah. Well, currently the H-1B is banned because of Trump's proclamation.
Yeah, but now it's gonna change. I mean, I think all this, it's gonna take a little bit of time, but everything is going to revert back to kind of normality and sanity. So.
That's good to hear. Some hopeful thoughts. So that it will happen eventually. So, and then from Seattle, you moved to LA, or there was
because I actually, when I was working in London, I was working mostly on hospitality-focused projects, and the issue is, it's very much a cultural issue. In Europe, we're used to design a number of things. I mean, if you are an architect, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to design a house the same way you could design a church. I mean, it's just a matter of understanding the opportunities and the use. But the US is very much like divided in compartments. So people kind of tend to pigeonhole sort of everybody. I mean, any professionals. I mean, you can see it among lawyers, even among dentists. I mean, there are dentists that do one thing but not the other, which is absurd. So in architecture and design, they do look at companies that have a specialty. So the fact that I had exposure in hospitality design and I had worked on projects internationally actually got the attention of a couple of firms that were sort of one of, actually the firm that I used to work with in LA doesn't even exist anymore, but I was basically recruited and I was asked to move, and frankly the weather was a lot better. And I just moved mostly for that reason, and because, I mean, the opportunity was obviously there. And that was it. Like I literally, I mean, I moved to LA without really knowing the city. I mean, and but I accepted a position and I moved, and that's it.
So your beginning seems to be pretty similar to the beginning of many of our participants, that at some point they just decided to take or grasp the opportunity, move to the US without knowing anything about the culture. Well, obviously the language, yes, but not people, or what the opportunity is gonna take in there. And then some of them stay and continue their professional career. That was something that was in your mind always. I mean, it was one of your goals to actually develop your professional career and set up your own firm and become, you know, a reference in the interior design industry as you are right now.
I mean, I don't think anybody like sets kind of that objective as a clear objective. My objective,
it's ambitious, but,
my objective was to work. Like, and in Europe, there are less opportunities. I mean, if you look at Italy, we are the #1 country by number of architects, like in comparison to the population. So obviously the opportunities are less. So my objective was, I want to learn this profession and I want to look for opportunities. And so I went to find them wherever they were available. So that was it. And then the rest, I think, is Italians are obviously pretty entrepreneurial, and we don't really live very well under other people's rules. I mean, we know that. So I also honestly thought that the way a lot of the larger firms, and now the scenario is completely different, because with 2 recessions, like a lot of things happen, and like larger firms broken up and a lot of like smaller firms were created. So I think that now the scene actually is a lot more interesting, and there are a lot more smaller firms that do actually very good work. But you can imagine 20 years ago, it was an industry that was completely dominated by larger names. And I felt that the way they worked, that was very stale. So that was really the reason why I decided that I prefer to do one little project by myself a year than, you know, 3 little large projects in an organization like that, because I honestly felt that most firms were not in the business of design. They were just in the business of selling architecture. So there was really nothing that was left to sort of the creative process, and it wasn't even a concern of delivering good design. And the concern was just to get the work done. So that was really not what I was interested in. I obviously learned sort of how to balance kind of exactly the requirements of a business that obviously needs to be profitable. I have a lot of people that depend on me, but also how not to sacrifice the design process. Yeah, and in addition to that, our projects are real. This is what I tell many people that we interview. This is not school. So we actually do build what we design. So we have to know how to build it, and we have to follow the process, because the process of actually following and assuring quality in the process of construction and being involved in that process is as equally important as the process of conceptualizing the ideas. Because you can have the best ideas, but if you don't know how to execute it, you don't have a good project. So I put an enormous amount of emphasis on that too. And I think that's
a really interesting approach, because I don't know if you agree with me, but from what I'm understanding and from what I also experienced myself when I was living in the US, is that there's like it is starting like a natural shift to a structure that is similar to or closer to what a studio, architecture studio is in Europe, where more horizontal organizations, you know, you have the leader that assists and is, you know, has a strong presence throughout the design process, but there's no all those compartments, you know, specialized kind of teams that at some point, yeah, they are very specialized, but at the same time they are disconnected. So it's very difficult to actually get like a rounded project or proposal, just because everything seems to be almost like Revit. You know, you work with MEP, you work with item design, you work with the structure, everything comes together, all the pieces comes together, yes. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that you lose.
Completely. I think what that project does is, the problem is that many people just look for a methodology and efficiency in the sequence, but then what it's lost is the holistic vision of the project. So,
the romantic part of it.
Well, and also like a real sort of holistic view. Like if you don't maintain kind of a team throughout the course of the project that knows the history of the project, you cannot troubleshoot or solve problems or make adjustments just based on the fact that you have some project management knowledge. So for me, the fact that, I mean, whoever manages the project from a design perspective needs to be someone who has been involved in the design process of that same project. Otherwise, you can't do it. I mean, you can do it, you're just not gonna do it well, in my opinion. So, I mean, I know people that literally work in architectural firm that all they do is design curtain walls. And I'm sure there are most beautiful curtain walls in the world, but honestly, that's not what makes the project. So you have to have the person that conceptualized the idea, that is able to carry through that idea towards completion. And a lot of people don't like to do it because they want to have concept designer and drafters and project manager, but I think the concept designer and the project manager can be the same person and should be the same person. Otherwise, you will not be able to understand. And by the way, I feel that people that work on concept are responsible for understanding how the concept can be executed. Otherwise, it's just signs on paper.
I totally agree with you, and this actually makes me wonder, how was your experience when you were working in you worked for a corporate at some point in the US, or you never experienced that?
Yeah, I worked for like a large sort of hospitality firm. It wasn't enormous, but it was still like 50 plus people. So.
Well, that's pretty reasonable size. But did they let you go? Meaning that my experience when I was working at H2K, right, corporate firm, the very beginning was exactly that. Like they're gonna to do ceilings, or as you said, curtain walls, or a very specific thing, and that's all. But I guess it was a combination of luck that I play also my cards well at the time, that I was vocal. I always reinforce this idea that you have to be very vocal when you are in a team. And I proved myself to be also a thinker. I had a critical thinking that is super important in the design process. And so they allow me to actually be part of that and take the responsibility of the design of a university at the time. So I was lucky. But so that takes me to the question I was trying to place, that despite the fact that I was able to prove those capabilities or skills, they the opportunity. So didn't you experience that, and at some point they didn't let you go? And
I had exactly the same experience, and I think that's a testament to the fact that while it's easier to just when you hire people to just focus on one skill because you need to fulfill a certain need, I think actually the ability to think in a broader way is appreciated. It's just that sometimes it's forgotten, just because actually, to be honest, finding people that are interested, not necessarily capable, but really interested in having kind of a lot more rounded sort of approach to design are not that many, because the reality is that to do it that way, it's a lot harder.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's difficult to say. I don't know if you have a lot of role models in the American industry per se, or the companies that you look for, at some point that are based in the US are from Europe or from somewhere else. But it's true that it's not that easy to find a strong conceptual. It's not conceptual, it's what you said. I mean, it's not one thing or the other, it's to be rounded. I mean, I think that an architect, one of the main features or characteristics of us is that we are super versatile, but that versatility comes from the fact that you know how to get to the detail scale, but before that you have been able to think about society, about
100%.
Right? And
I think we're a lot more adaptable. I mean, I always make kind of this joke, but I say if you manage to graduate at La Sapienza, then you can probably navigate the world, because just to find out where is like basically the student sort of admin building or request a certificate. Yeah, I mean, it takes so you literally, I mean, if you manage actually to figure out that system, you can probably adapt anywhere. So it's true. I mean, we, particularly in Italy, we live in a society that is where the bureaucracy is obviously highly convoluted. So people really need to learn kind of how to adapt and find their own solutions. And I think that's maybe what in the end gives us a little bit of advantage, because we are definitely already sort of, we already know that adaptation it's required, like in any type of circumstance. Yeah, it's just part of life. So
yes. And in terms of that advantage that you were mentioning, I think is something that all the internationals that are planning to move to the US or somewhere else, overseas, they should kind of do an exercise of analyzing the differences between the two systems, you know, their home country system and where they're moving to, just to understand very clearly what is their valuable offer, you know, what they can bring to the table. That is something that it should be always asked. I think is normally asked in an interview, but it's very important because that is gonna set you in a position, and it is going to also speak about where you are trying to accomplish and what are your goals within that new firm. And I was going to ask you, how do you, because I know that your indie design is a very multidisciplinary firm. We actually, just so you know, guys, I don't even remember when we met. I mean, just last year. How we started working together, but I think that you have hosted like 4 or 5 Architect US participants so far. They were from Spain, from Italy, there was a Colombian guy as well, and I know that your team is pretty diverse, right?
Yes.
You like that kind of
So, I mean, the US in general is obviously multicultural. Los Angeles in particular, it's definitely a destination for a lot of people from different nationalities. So I don't necessarily look for cultural diversity, but of course, like in a sense, I guess I don't do it consciously, but definitely like we do gravitate to sort of those resumes that end up showing kind of more like a, you know, versatility and sort of a quality of methodology in the thinking process. And most of the time that, you know, results into sort of a diverse cultural background. So it could be people that maybe have been here many years, but they, you know, are coming from somewhere else or culturally, or maybe they were just students. So it's not necessarily that we look for foreigners, but we look for talent. And talent comes from many different countries. So we like to obviously just focus on sort of who can bring kind of, you know, the right chemistry sort of to the team. And as a result, of course, so we have kind of a range of nationality, range of like languages that are spoken, but it's true that in the US, you don't have to look very hard. That's what I'm trying to say, because it is already sort of a multicultural type of society, at least in the larger cities.
Yeah, but I mean, that is something that you always take into account when building your teams, right? Like trying to have as much diversity as possible because of what it brings to the table, especially in the design process.
I look for diversity, obviously, in the ideas, but I also look at how someone is gonna fit in. Like, to me, that's actually half probably of the answer, because like working with people that have sort of the right kind of attitude and personality is important, because you can have the most you know, talented people on paper, but if they're not actually able to work in a team environment, they can't contribute. So
yeah, that's interesting point too. I mean, we have to meet so many criteria at the same time. But let me go back to the beginning of Indidesign in 2003, if I'm not wrong.
yes.
Since you started, I mean, only like in 3 years you were already awarded by you got the best. Sorry. I have here the proper names. I don't want to say it wrong. You got the Hospitality Design Award in 2006 for being the best emerging firm in hospitality. And since 2009, consistently, you have been, Indidesign has been ranked among the top 50 hospitality design firms by the Interior Design magazine. So you can get an idea, guys, of you know, what sort of company we are speaking about. And I would like to learn how you actually started. I mean, it was only you? Did you fund it with somebody else? How was the actual bureaucratic process as an international? I mean, I can ask you, I don't know, 20, 30 questions.
Honestly, I mean, I started with very little to do, but I knew enough people that knew the way I worked, and I just kind of like let everybody know that I was ready to sort of help them. And slowly work started to come. Like literally.
So what do you mean, like in terms of collaborations with the people that
it was, yeah, mostly, let's say, other architects or other firms. I mean, because in the US, things are so sort of like basically very compartmentalized. There are architects, let's say, that only do act as architects of record. So they miss, let's say, all that design component. So you can actually team up with those type of firms because they do require actually people that think about, you know, the actual design aspect of the project. But what they do very well is getting you a permit. Okay.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Or I spoke with developers that I knew, and by the way, I mean, I am very hands-on, so we do virtually no marketing. I mean, people really know us, also, and mostly we work with people that we worked with before. So I reached out to construction companies, developers, and then slowly I basically started getting work. I mean, at the beginning, I did a little bit of everything.
It was almost like the old style, right? I mean, because in the US, one of the things that it really shocked me from the very beginning is, well, they're really good at marketing themselves. That is something that I think that they are.
But honestly, there is no better marketing tool than the quality of your work. So you can go out and tell people what you think of yourself, but the reality is that people will recommend you if they know that they're recommending the right person, and that like people obviously, I mean, I care a lot about my word, like, and I put a lot of weight on sort of recommending people, and so do most of the people that I work with. So I didn't ask for favors. I just said, I am looking for work, and if you think, you know, what we did in the past was successful, I would appreciate an opportunity. And that's kind of how, honestly, it came about. For 1 or 2 years, I did a lot of smaller jobs, and then slowly, the work started coming in until we were given a couple of large opportunities with like larger sort of brands. It's also, I mean, truly, to me, it comes down to the quality of your work and the quality of your dedication and service. If people know that you're gonna put your best effort behind what you do, and they like, obviously, the quality of your ideas, I think it's gonna happen.
The best business card,
yeah.
That's for sure. That is for sure. But what I was trying to say is that I hadn't seen before the marketing figure within an architecture structure before. And in the US, that is
100%. They actually have, they pay business development people more than they pay like ideas. I actually, throughout the years, I always debated, should we have a business development person? And we even interviewed quite a few people, but in the end, it just didn't feel right for us. I mean, it doesn't match sort of my vision of what I want to do. I don't want to run a business. I want to run a design studio, which is very different. So of course, I mean, we want to be successful, which means being financially successful, which in architecture doesn't mean, obviously, that you're going to make, you know, hedge fund money. I mean, you're just going to make a living, and hopefully like a decent one. I mean, compared, I think, to the amount of time that we invest in anything that we do, we're the least sort of rewarded profession. But at the same time, I mean, I think you can be sensible, you can make a good living, and you can produce quality work. And this is why I just felt that moving towards sort of trying to be something that we're not was really just not the right philosophy. I mean, in the end, as I said, we really considered it to the point that we talked to a lot of different people that potentially could actually take over this role. I just couldn't, it just didn't feel right. So
that's interesting. I mean, you're just running. I think that you said that in the forum that you fill out before the interview, that you're running your business as Italian style. I mean, you don't really fit in certain, rigid frames, and in the sense of how, the American building
I can
industry
tell you
works.
even more, like a few years ago, maybe like 6-7 years ago, and I can't really say anything of the specific, but actually someone approached us to buy us out. Like, and I didn't even do that because I just didn't feel it was right. So
well, probably they thought that you had lost your mind, or that you didn't know what you were doing. But I think that
at the end of the day, you're just gonna, I mean, my feeling was that like a lot of these sort of offers look a lot better on paper than what they really are. And then in the end, is it worth it? I mean, I work really hard to build this firm, and I work hard every day. I mean, everybody here works hard, but honestly, nobody works the hours that I work. So I'm not someone that comes in at 11 and doesn't work on Friday and has kind of a leisurely weekend. I pretty much work every weekend, but nevertheless, my consideration was that I still probably feel freer than if I had sold my company to someone else and I had to basically perform at a really high standard for 2 or 3 years, and a standard that was theirs, not mine. Like to actually eventually get out of it. And then at the end, what I would have done was probably start another firm. So it wasn't really worth it. So.
I see. Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious that you don't really fall into the business kind of only business architect. I mean, you're more interested in what the profession offers you personally as well, and professionally. And I think that's really valuable. I mean, I think that is.
Honestly, I don't know if it's smart, but most of the time I just go with my instinct. It's like what I feel is right. So.
Yeah. And in terms of, even though it seems like you started like in a very natural way, just continuing the relationship that you have built through the years with other industry colleagues and so on. Did you experience any hardships just because of being an international trying to open up a business in terms of operations and bureaucratics, or?
No, I don't think that was ever an issue. Okay. But I experienced a lot of other hardships.
So if you can tell us 2 or 3, I mean, the ones that you think are more descriptive, so they can.
Well, I think first of all, being a woman and being a woman in architecture is difficult. I mean, there are only maybe 17% of women in architecture, like of architects in are women, and like when you go to an executive level, the percentage is this small. I mean, you can go to all the websites, let's say just for fun, of larger firms, go on Foster sites or Richard Rogers. You will see Foster has 1 woman in his executive team, and it's his secretary, like that eventually became a partner. So it's not even an architect. So it's definitely a male, very dominated world. And when you find yourself at the table, very often the general contractor is all male, structural engineer, hardly ever seen a woman. Like MEP, same thing. Like clients, we work with the majority of, like major financial firms and investors and people that are able to buy expensive assets. There are no women in finance. So when you have women, they're at a much lower level. Even in the brands, like you don't have a VP of design and development that is a woman. Generally, you have like a project manager or like people kind of, so there are women, they're just not making decisions. So that is definitely a challenge. So, but I never made it honestly a problem. I always went into the room like with enough self-confidence to be able to say, I don't know the answer and I'm gonna research it, and just ready to kind of, you know, do my job. So, and I think in the end, people appreciated that. But what I'm saying is that I never felt like diminished or in a position of disadvantage because I was a woman. But the reality is that I probably lost projects because I was competing against firms that had a different type of makeup. There's no question about it.
Oh, really? So, to that
for
point?
Sure.
Wow.
So, and what I'm saying is I never really considered it an handicap. I mean, I don't spend my days thinking, oh my God, like I wish this wasn't the case.
No, but it's a real career.
But, you know, at least at the beginning, yes, because when you see someone who is like, you know, mid-30s and is trying to do the job or present kind of the ideas of like a firm of 80 people, where you have, you know, a panel of like guys that have a different way to relate to other guys, definitely. Like there is a disadvantage.
And how would you say that is your experience in the site in that regard, being a
actually, you know, more positive. Like I've never had problems because honestly, like I mean, I work in a very cooperative way with contractors, and they know that I know what I want, and I also know how to execute it, and I also really value their expertise. And so I've always been able to forge a really like a strong relationships of mutual respect. So with every single construction companies that we ever interacted with, no matter how small or how large.
Okay, that's interesting because I mean, I know that you travel a lot, and it is one of your daily tasks also to take control. I mean, take over the sites. I mean, do you go normally?
Well, we can't really monitor the sites like weekly because it would be impossible because we have too much work and it's all over the place. But we do try to have a presence, at least to kind of visualize and inspect sort of the site at different stages and weigh in on sort of quality control, and also sort of by constructability, visualize you know, some of the problems that may arise on site. So definitely, this is why I was saying what we build is real. So a knowledge of how things are built or an interest in learning how things are built is key.
Is key to join you. Okay, let me go through some of the questions that our audience placed. We got many, so I'm gonna try to just pick some of them because otherwise we'll have you here forever. But maybe you have already touched this one. But what was the biggest challenge for you in terms of practicing architecture in the U.S.? It was you know, positioning yourself as a woman within the industry, gaining reputation.
I don't think that was, yeah, I don't think that was actually the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is you have to be patient and you have to build a body of work and a number of relationships that will allow you to be trusted. So I would say I'm not a very patient person, and patience and learning patience is actually like what's gonna help you to kind of focus on the big picture. So, but I have to say, I mean, this society is also very rewarding because I feel that in the United States, quality and commitment is really valued, and it's not just who you know, like in a lot of other places. So if you actually,
it's a real
it is.
mediocracy.
It's a real meritocracy,
Meritocracy,
yes, so 100%. And this is why I think if your objective is to put out good work, good ideas, and be really stand behind sort of your work, I think once you kind of find that balance and you master kind of that formula, I think people will appreciate it. And that's really the key.
Yes, okay. We have someone here. I'm going to try to read it super small. One is asking us how to maintain quality when market is bad. Designers are let go, and when projects come back, new designers take the project without knowing. Oh, I cannot see the entire. It was too long. Juan, if you can summarize it, the screen is not showing me the entire question. So if you can just send it again, we'll make sure to pass it on to Beatrice. But and in terms of yes, so in terms of the hardships that you were mentioning, is there something that you would have wished someone told you before starting your own business? It doesn't really matter that it's in the US or, you know.
To be honest,
I
mean, I think.
Do you think that we are actually educated at
No.
school to become, you know, the principals or
No,
the leaders of
not at all, like 0%.
organization?
So, and honestly, no matter how much advices you get from people, you still have to kind of test it. Yeah, like you learn in the process. So, but definitely we are completely unprepared because obviously you have to kind of manage not just the design process, but really kind of learn how to manage a business. So I would say hardships, I don't see them as hardships, mostly as challenges. There have been many, but you know, like just like design is a solution. Yeah, of course, all the above. I mean, I went through 3 recessions, so obviously, I mean, and the last one is just here, you know, like before the shutdown, we have a certain number of projects, like 3 weeks later, it looks like everybody was completely sort of discouraged. Like we had clients that were thinking they were gonna like lose their jobs and their company, and some actually did. So of course, I mean, the fluctuations obviously of the market, particularly in the US, are so steep. You have like explosions of like wealth and like huge dips. In Europe, you have more of a wave. Here you literally have a roller coaster. So that
How
is.
have you managed those 3 recessions? Do you plan ahead?
You can't plan ahead a recession because I mean, look at COVID. It's like it was impossible. But I think one advantage that we always had is that I never really push sort of the growth of the company beyond my capabilities. I mean, I always knew that I didn't want a firm larger than a certain size, and I kept it to that size. And if that means that, you know, rolling up your sleeves when we have to work extra hard, that's fine because it allows us to actually take a breather when there is less work. So it's really about how you manage sort of your own objectives. My objectives has never been to have like to go for world domination.
How big have you been?
We've always been the same size, literally. Like we have never been more than 15 people, and that has always allowed me to weather the storm. But you have to have 15 really good people. So I always say that we do, you know, in 3-4 people, like projects that take 12 people in other firms, because it's a matter of literally sort of methodology and how we use our time and how, you know, like we're able to multitask and move also within projects. That I think is what made us kind of maybe more equipped than others.
And more adaptable
I mean, we still kind of took the hit, but maybe we suffered a little bit less.
Yeah, well, speaking up with many colleagues and partner companies that we work with, I have to say that it's pretty widespread. Like the larger structures, corporates, and so on, they are the ones really suffering
of course.
the COVID outbreak.
Because they overextend and they have a ton of duplication of tasks, and they also have a lot of managers and executives that don't really know their jobs. They just have the mandate of growth, but they don't really understand like what growth entails. And so let's not forget that people that are in an executive position don't really necessarily know what they're doing. I mean, we assume they do, but it's not the case most of the time. They're just people. So we tend to think that they have something special over us, but it's not true. I mean, like, I don't value or people because of their title. I mean, I kind of look at what people can really bring to the table.
Do you still, though, recommend young architects that are watching us now to actually experience what it's like to be under a large structure? Or
it totally depends from the individual. It really depends. I mean, everybody has a different personality. So I think any experience is a good experience, but and then you will learn if that's for you.
Learn what you don't want to do,
exactly.
Right? And how things are not following your, vision or your mission as an architect. I remember when I joined Together, all my friends were like, my previous job was at Herzog in the Nura. Before that, I had the luck to work with Peter Cook. So everyone that I had worked with before were really design oriented. And all of a sudden, I was just joining this huge corporation. But I have to say that I have one of the best experiences in my life. I mean, I learned so much about how to run a business well and how to operate in a more vertical pyramidal kind of a structure, and learning what I don't like, learning what I wouldn't do if I run my own business, and also learning about how to manage a team and to grow and pay attention to incomes and
100%. I honestly think I don't think there is any experience that can be bad. Like every experience is valuable, and it's just first of all, I would advise everybody not to have preconceived ideas, especially when you're young designers. Just go.
You have to be open.
Yeah, be open. Go for your instinct, and I think truly, something can be learned in any circumstance. I would be shocked if it didn't happen.
Yes. Well, let me see if there's just last question.
I'm actually gonna have to go. I have a commitment right now, so I'm gonna have to go.
Okay, well, 7, go. Now is, what time is in LA now?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, okay, yeah. It's been an hour, so it's been more than enough, guys. I'm sorry, we just got tons of questions through.
I mean, we can do this again, like, it's no problem. I mean, we can pick it up in a couple of weeks if you want. So.
Yeah, it has to be in a couple of weeks because in a couple of months probably I'll be gone. I'm really pregnant. You cannot see my belly, but I'm huge now. But anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like we were just sitting in front of each other with a cup of coffee.
We will. I have my tea here.
Oh, okay. No, but I love how transparent you are, how approachable. This also helps people to understand that they don't have to be always fear about speaking, to a principal, to a leader. I mean, they are human beings. They have been probably at the same spot where you are right now.
Yes.
If there's someone that could understand you, is someone like Beatrice. And again, thank you so much. It's been very, very wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you. Let's do it again before the baby comes. And if anyone that is listening has any questions, so please send them over.
I will pass them to you. Yeah. I was thinking to maybe do like a round table with more, like a Zoom call with more principals to make it a little bit more diverse, from different opportunities, and also inviting some of our colleagues from the US. And I think that could be also really interesting. So I'll keep you posted.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks again,
Thank you
Patricia.
very much.
Thank you
Have a
for
good one.
inviting me. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.